Let's say that you're an executive in a company. Everything is going well, results are good, but suddenly a new person is hired and they think that they're hot stuff. They want to change things around here, they don't listen to anyone, and they have their own agenda to create their own legacy. How do you persuade this type of executive? Let's take a look at how. So what we're going to focus on today are 5 distinct techniques, and these techniques help you connect better and help you persuade someone who is new in the company. Maybe they want to change things up, maybe they want to show value, but what they have in common is that they're new here and they want to kind of show that they're the new sheriff in town. Or at least, even if they're not in charge, they want to show that they're changing something around here, just to show value. It is difficult to deal with this type of person because they don't want to respect the status quo. They want to change something. But it is possible to persuade them and to help them with your own initiatives or your own agenda. It is a little bit hard to persuade this type of person since they have their own goals and agenda, but it's not impossible. And you can make their goals compatible with yours and kind of forge an alliance. And the 5 techniques that we're going to discuss help precisely with that. The first technique is to preempt the situation. Sit down with them immediately and have an honest conversation. What are you looking for? What do you need? How do you see me fitting into your plan? And so on. The reason for this is that you want to get in front of the problem as soon as possible. A lot of executives do nothing when somebody new comes along. They pout, they get emotional, they do nothing, they resist, and at the end of the day, they waste a possible opportunity to shape that new energy towards their purposes. They consider it almost like a fight. We represent the old ways, and this crazy new person represents disruption, and both are not compatible. But in reality, you can consider that both of them are compatible, but it does require you to sit down with the person and have an honest conversation. Don't be like those executives that just deny everything. And then, after 1 or 2 years, they're still on the defensive. They're still doing the same thing, and the new person has gained a lot of reputation and gained a lot of terrain because they've been innovating, and both sides don't speak to each other. It's not what you want. So what you want to do here is just invite them to an honest conversation. Sit down with them and ask, hey, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to build as your legacy? Why do you think that this isn't working? Why do you think that your thing is going to work? And find some common ground. Even if you don't agree with them, show respect for their vision and show that things can be compatible. The key here is to not be on the defensive and not make enemies out of them since the first day. The second technique is a perfect segue to this one, and it's to talk about their legacy. By this I mean the following. When a new executive enters a company, they're trying to create something, and they're not just trying to change things just because. Usually, they want to build something of their own. They want to create a legacy, they want to create their own executive portfolio. And the key here is your own initiatives may be compatible with that. A lot of executives think, and mistakenly, that they have their agenda, I have my agenda, and both are conflicting. Either we do one thing or we do the other. But in reality, both of them can be compatible. So what you want to do here is you want to ask them, what are you trying to achieve here? And how can I help in this process? Now, you don't need to place yourself in a subordinate position to them. It's like equals. You have your own kingdom, they have their own kingdom, and what you're trying to do is you're asking, hey, what are your priorities? And how can I help? How can we make it beneficial for both of us? It's important to realize that this is about recognition. Any new executive that enters a company, well, they're just looking for recognition. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be given power. And when you have this conversation with them, you are acknowledging that power. You're not saying that they're above you, but you're saying that they are there, that you see them. You would be surprised at how many executives, male and female, tone down their aggression once they realize that they are seen. In many cases, they want to create such a disruption because they want to be seen by the other executives. And these are resisting and they don't give them credit. So giving them credit and even asking, how can I help you in your goals, makes them tone down their aggression and become a lot more open to compatible initiatives. The third technique is to immediately have the reaction that you would have anyway. It's about discipline. What I mean by this is the following. If they're going above your head, or they're disrespecting someone, or they're breaking chain of command, or whatever it is, you gotta show them from day one that this is not tolerable. And here's the thing, you may think that this contradicts a little bit the previous point, but it doesn't. The key here is, this is about discipline, it's about culture, and it's about governance. What you want to do is, you want to say, hey, I want to help you with your goals, with your initiatives, and to create your legacy, but don't step out of line because that will not be tolerated. And this is a mistake. that a lot of executives make, although it's a completely different mistake. So there's a new executive that's coming in and they're cutting a lot of corners, but someone is afraid to actually stand up to them or to even raise the awkward subject, so they don't do anything. So this new executive just becomes used to doing whatever they want because they cut corners and they skip the corporate governance procedures and nobody tells them anything. And here's the thing, this problem is not mutually exclusive considering the previous one. It is completely reasonable for the other executives to not give credit to this new person and not recognize them, but to still allow them to do things that they shouldn't because they just don't engage with them. And what you want to do is to not fall into any of these traps. Point number 4 is to progressively test the relationship. And when I mean test, I mean asking for favors to actually gauge whether they do them or not. What I mean by this is the following. Think of Adam Grant's framework of the givers and takers. In an organization, you have givers, which are people that do favors and help others progress, and maybe they get something in return. And you have people who are just takers. They just ask and ask and ask, and they do nothing in return. And what you want to do, effectively, is you want to know right away whether this person is a giver or a taker, and how much of a giver or taker they actually are. So what you want to do here is you want to throw out small tests to tease out how they behave. For example, asking for a favor, asking for help with something, asking for a small commitment, and learning early on whether this person is actually going to honor commitments or to do favors, or whether they just keep taking and giving nothing in return. This is important because if you are possibly going to depend on this person or collaborate with them, you want to know right away whether they actually help you or not. And if they do it under certain circumstances, which circumstances are those? I would suggest that you even ask for things that you don't really need at the beginning stage to just gauge whether this person really is going to help or not. Yes, you are manufacturing artificial situations just to test them, but it's better to test them than to find out much later that you can't rely on this person when there's a big project, okay? So you want to find this out as early as possible. And the final tip is, if it comes down to it, be on the offensive and not on the defensive. And by this I mean the following. If the new person, this new executive, is creating something that goes directly against you, such as, for example, a recommendation that goes against one of your projects, you will be put on the defensive. And you can't stay on the defensive for a couple of seconds, but you can also stay on the defensive for a couple of days, months, or years. It's all up to you. So what I mean is that when people are used to something and there's something new that enters, immediately everybody feels threatened. That's just how life is. It's the same as, for example, in a group of friends, if one of them suddenly becomes rich or becomes very fit, every single one of the other ones are going to feel threatened because they think, hey, this person is forcing me to face things which I really haven't been facing, and to admit to myself that maybe I'm actually worse in this area than I would like to admit. But here's the key. Even though most people in the group may be in denial, there's usually one person that says, you know what? They're right. I have not been dealing with this area as I should, but I'm going to take care of it right now. And I'm going to do what this other person did, where I'm going to become even better. And here's the key. In an executive situation, the exact same thing happens. You will have a group of executives who are used to the old ways, good salaries, maybe not doing a lot if the culture is like that. And when you have someone who is purely focused on performance, everybody is going to feel threatened. But here's the key. You can decide to continue being in denial and to not take this person seriously, and a couple of years from now, you are going to be in the same place and this person will have progressed a lot further. Or you can really face it and say, hey, is it true? Am I really not doing this like I should? Can I improve something? And here's the key. When you take that initiative, you become again on the offensive. You're not on the defensive. You're not defending against this person. You are in attack mode again. And the beautiful thing is, because you know the organization and you know the people and you have the resources, in many cases, you can just decide to do something very similar to the new person, but do it even better. So it's very important to notice here that once someone new has entered and they're changing how things are done, you can either decide to resist it or you can go along with it. But here's the key. The same things are going to happen either way. But if you're in denial, you're just going to be resisting it and maybe you don't do anything and you miss an opportunity. But if you decide to do something and to go on the offensive, you are going to do a lot more. And you are possibly going to make positive changes as well. It does take a little bit of effort because you have to go back to young mode when you were proving yourself and when you were doing things and getting a lot of results. But here's the key. Again, if this new person is bringing a new way of doing things, you can either resist it or you can go along with it. And if you decide to go along with it, you can take the initiative that this new person is taking, and you can take the same amount of initiative, or you can do even better things. So here's the key. You don't need to be on the defensive just because a new person has entered the room. You can be on the defensive if you want to, but you can also switch and be back on the offensive. And the decision is completely up to you. So these are 5 keys to deal with that new executive in the company. First, have an honest conversation immediately. Don't ignore them. Don't pretend that they're not there. Be honest with them. What do you want? How can I help? Then, focus on their legacy. What are they trying to create here? And how is that compatible with what you're doing? Even if there's not a major compatibility here, they are going to be less aggressive because they feel understood. The next point is to focus on discipline and governance. Don't let them cut corners, and don't let them do things that they shouldn't. If you're going to have a reaction, have it immediately. You have much higher chances of fixing a dysfunctional situation if you go up to the person and you tell them this is not allowed the first time that they do it, versus after 6 months or even worse. Then, test the alliance. Throw out a couple of favors and requests and gauge whether they actually help you or whether they don't. You want to figure out what is their attitude right at the beginning. And finally, if it comes down to a battle or a competition, remember, you don't need to be on the defensive. Our first instinct is to be on the defensive when a new person or a new initiative comes, but you don't have to remain on the defensive. You can take the same amount of initiative or even more, and then you are back on the offensive and they're on the defensive. If you enjoyed the content in the video, make sure to browse the channel for more negotiation and persuasion techniques, and naturally, like and subscribe if you want to be notified of more content like this. Thank you so much for watching.